them that way. We will take 3 minutes for opening comments from our two legislators, and then we'll get to your questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. You come to the podium, state your name and where you live, and if you want to make a comment or two, I'll allow that. But we are here to listen to the legislators, not to the audience. So, and I will just indicate to you that you please keep that in mind with all due respect. With that, we will begin with opening comments, and we'll begin with Representative Greenfield. Lana?
Thank you very much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's even better to see all of you here. Interested people, interested parties coming to listen to all the adventures and misadventures of the state legislature. Throughout the session so far, we've had a lot of people visiting from here on. You know, we've had Kristen out there for CSP, Dr. Steinoff was out there for the administrators meeting, and I roped him into also giving a presentation in the education group. He and Dr. Guffin from Aberdeen and Dr. Lee from Willow Lake gave a presentation on the literacy of reading, which we hope will improve the scores of the reading of our students in the elementary grades. I'm looking for great things to happen here, and it's been greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. We also had a Huron instrumental group come and play during the administrators' luncheon. We've had Mr. Bragg, one of your commissioners, and the mayor has been out there. And so what I'm saying is, you know, everybody's welcome. It's good to see so much interest coming out of this area. In education, which I chair, we've had a lot of different issues come up. We have talked about gun bills even in education as they relate to colleges. And last year we had a bill that went through. And now they wanted to tweak it and take all the parameters off so that the kids don't have to have an enhanced permit. We were able to squelch that. We've had a person come and try to change the kindergarten time so that the kids could start earlier. We've had some groups come about the motto in the schools and putting up under God the people rule. Oh, let's see, the data center, that went down. I believe I didn't get to vote on that, but that was in committee and that went down. Excuse me, the fake meat was a hot button issue on the floor. Taxes. You know, we've been debating, and there's several different legislative bills out there on taxation. And I see that I'm running out of time, so those are just some issues, and I'm sure that you have more questions on other things that have come up in the legislative session. So with that, I thank you, and I'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Representative Greenfield. Now we'll hear from Senator Whiff. Brendan?
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, good morning, everyone. When I heard that Representative Van Diepen had fallen ill, I first texted Lana. I said, please stay healthy. I don't want to do the first one of these completely on my own. I knew I was going to forget something this morning. The only thing I forgot was my legislative name badge, but you just call me Brandon. That is fine with me. So I have been learning the ropes the last few weeks. We are just starting to get into the real long slog. This was our only 5-day week. Most of the weeks of sessions are either a Monday through Thursday or a Tuesday through Friday, so you can have a day back in your district to speak with constituents or to handle, you know, your business. I have a farm. My dad's here. I leave him by himself to handle everything, and I'm grateful to have at least a day here and there to be back with him. I really appreciate the decorum that we have amongst the senators. We will debate very tough issues. Sometimes if you're watching on TV, we're really going not after each other, but we're raising tough points. That's our job. but we do a good job of separating the person from the argument they're making. And once you step outside the swinging doors that the Senate has there, it's really very cordial, and I appreciate that. I've learned a lot from my fellow legislators just in keeping the person from the argument separated. I'll highlight one big thing that we moved through, I believe it was last week, House Bill 1044. This was in relation to some of the rural health care dollars that came out of the big, beautiful bill. And at first, we were going to try to move all 5 years of the program through, but it was felt that in order to be prudent and to make sure that we got all the votes we needed to pass that through, we did the first 2 years. And so in the first 1 year of the program, there's going to be $190 million flowing out to rural communities to deal with health care. And I know how important it is to all of us that as we age, that we're able to get our care close to home. We don't want to have to go 50 miles away to find a nursing home bed. We don't want to have to go 2 hours away to Sioux Falls every time we need to see any kind of doctor. And so bringing the care close to home into our smaller towns, I think, is going to continue to be important when I look at the sort of demographics that we have here. And I know that's the kind of community that I want to live in. Now, I see my time is coming almost to a close here, but I don't want to just sit here and talk. I want to start hearing from y'all, so let's just proceed with that. Mike?
Thank you, Senator. So we are ready for the first questioner. Please indicate who that may be. Come to the podium, state your name. Yes, and where you live.
I can be the first victim. Tim Van Burkham, Huron. My question would be on House Bill 1168, school voucher bill. It's coming to Representative Greenfield's committee shortly. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I had assigned that one for this last week, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with it because the guy that is sponsoring it came to me and said, no, I don't have a lot of people that are going to do the sponsorship, and I don't have it ready. So I don't know if they're going to go forward with it or not. Obviously, the voucher bill, we've got education tax credits set up for private schools already. There's $5 million there. As far as more vouchers, I think that we increased the poverty level from 150 to 200. Was that right, Dr. Steinoff? 200%. Yeah, and so that's for the poverty level so that they can qualify for scholarships for the private school and also get more people in the program of being able to eat their lunches free or reduced. I don't see this going forward. I think that, when Senator Whiff was talking about the big, beautiful bill, there are tax credits possibly that are going to be extended to people that they can tie in with their private schools and donate, is it $1,700, I believe. And so I don't really see this bill going anywhere, to be honest with you.
Senator?
Yeah, she is correct. I just looked, other than the prime sponsor, there's only one House member listed as a co-sponsor and no one on the Senate side. I think it indicates what I'm getting is there's not a lot of appetite in the legislature for doing this. We're in a very tight budgetary year, so that certainly weighs on opinions on this. And then on top of that, the $1,700 that will be coming, you're going to be able to take a tax credit on your federal taxes and send $1,700 to a scholarship granting organization. Now that can go to private schools, but there's also some categories where that's going to be helpful in our public schools. After school tutoring is going to be, for instance, one of the ways that this money will be able to flow out. And so I think there will be a lot of uptake on that. And there's going to be a lot of people that say, why would I send $1,700 to Washington, D.C. when I can keep it in South Dakota? And I'll just point out Minnesota has not opted into this. So if you've got cousins over in Minnesota, they can't donate to somewhere in Minnesota, but they can still donate into South Dakota. And so having a neighboring state that's decided not to opt into that may work in our advantage as well. So look forward to that, and I think with that, you know, being out there, the appetite for the voucher thing is probably not going to be there this year. That's where I see that going to.
Thank you. We are ready for another question. Who would like to ask the next question? Have had a question sent up here, House Bill 1021. How does it relate to Huron and where does it go? Who wants to start with that?
I will, actually, because that was the first time I got up and carried a bill on the Senate floor. I got a text from the Secretary of Ag saying, hey, would you be willing to present this? So when the Secretary reads a bill number, the President calls on the person who's going to be carrying the bill to stand up first, explain the bill to the other people in the Senate. I must have done an okay job because nobody stood up to oppose me. And I'll say there's kind of a tradition in the Senate. Usually you try to give the new guy a little bit of a hard time, all in fun, but usually they try to throw some weird questions at you or something. But nobody did that to me that afternoon, and so I was happy about that. If you drive on Lincoln Avenue and you pull into, you know, near the pits of the racetrack there's 3 Quonset buildings. And I remember commenting to Mandy, my wife, when we were parking this year at the fair. I looked at them like, we need to do something with this. It's one of the first things that people see when they pull up to our fairgrounds, and they don't look that great. And so when I saw that they were on the slate maybe for being torn down, I thought, well, good, I was onto something. And then I'll say there are some buildings on the northeast corner of the fairgrounds that have the electrical work in them has gotten so old, and the buildings have gotten so old that they've decided to tear those down too. I was able to speak with the Secretary of Ag and suggest that maybe we could save some money by doing some local fire department and volunteer fire department training, and actually let's burn those buildings down, and then we've got a firefighting foam that's based on soybean oil, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to do some training on that as well, because this foam doesn't have those forever chemicals that you hear about being in the traditional firefighting foam. And as a farmer that raises soybeans, I'm really excited that maybe we'll be able to be a part of that. So that's what's going on with HB 1021.
Comments, Representative?
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, we kind of saw the same thing when my husband and I were driving around the fairgrounds, and the one end looks pretty dowdy, and those buildings do need to be torn down. You know, it's just like anything, it's surpassed its use. And so I'm glad to see that something's going to be done with them to keep our state fairgrounds looking really, really nice.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? Come forward, please. State your name and where you live.
I'm Kristen Klein, and I live in Huron. I would like to, referencing the tight budget year, there is a committee to do a 5% cut, looking at ways to do a 5% cut, kind of across the board. I just wonder your opinion, does that have any traction?
Thank you.
Yes, so that's a working group within the Committee on Appropriations, and they were kind of assigned to this concept of cut 5% across the board, or find 5%. There's certain conversations I'm not able to talk about, but I'll say it's losing traction as the weeks go on. The folks that are kind of pushing for that are starting to see the tide turn against them, and I'll just maybe leave it at that. I was disappointed in the governor's, baseline budget, basically a 0% increase for what we call the big 3, which is CSPs, which would be represented by, for instance, your organization, state employees, and K-12 education. And there's a lot of appetite up there to try to find something that we can do, because we know costs for insurance, costs for operating, any kind of anything in this economy have gone up, and so a 0% increase amounts to a cut, really. So.
Okay.
Representative?
Yeah, sure. I haven't heard about this. Actually, it hasn't hit the state legislature representatives, I guess. so there must not be anybody cheerleading for it in the House of Representatives. The governor, I think, when he got up to give his budget address, was trying to be blatantly honest about our money, lack thereof. And, you know, we got really spoiled during the COVID years when we had that big dump of money. Then it was like, oh, what are we going to spend it on? What are we going to spend it on? Make sure that the people that really need it are covered. And what ended up happening is we got used to that money. And now there isn't nearly as much. And so we have to be a little bit prudent. I didn't think that the governor helped his campaign by saying 0%, but I do appreciate him as an honest governor. And I think we'll go forward from here. And that was a suggestion in the budget. And I was just looking at Senator White. He kind of knows how this rolls. He's good with numbers. And a lot of times we start out at a very low, and then we go, oh, we found some money. So I'm not very concerned with the fact that there'd be a 5% budget cut. I'm hoping there's going to be at least a 2% increase, but who knows?
Thank you.
Could you just repeat the
Ma'am,
question?
ma'am,
Could you just repeat the
ma'am.
question that is asked?
For the benefit of the TV show, would you please come to the podium and identify yourself?
Could you please repeat the questions that are asked for the elderly who can't hear anything? Because
Okay.
we can't hear, I can't hear the questions at all.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? This gentleman will speak up, so I think we'll be able to hear the question.
Careful what you say, Senator Whiff. He's the person with the poison pen.
Oh, I know.
I don't know, they don't let me around pens anymore, it's all computers now. I'm Ben Chase with the Huron Paper, and one of the things that I have noticed come through our legislature a lot in the last couple of years, and we're dealing with some of the fallout of it this year with bills, is essentially seeking a problem with a solution, and that is in voting. And we've changed our voting date, which is creating a potential significant amount of issues for our county auditors. And now we have changes in when candidates can apply and all that sort of stuff. In talking, I recently contacted auditors that we serve with the paper, and let's just say that not very many of them feel like they have been talked to by the legislature on these bills. It's a lot of top-down bills is kind of the understanding I got. And I'm just curious on your guys' end, with these voting bills, our voting is really driven in South Dakota by our auditors and how they run elections and how much contact you guys have had with county auditors in considering these bills that get put forward on voting.
Well,
The question is the number of election bills that are before the legislature and the reaction. Who wants to start?
I can start. Well, Ben, you know, to be honest, we want to run everything out there in the legislature. And even if we don't know what we're doing, we think that we're the authorities on everything, apparently. I don't know. But I think that, you know, when we have a method in place, and it seems to be working, I don't know why we have to continue to, I call it wreck the rock pile, because then it causes a domino effect, and it does, just as you said. It affects the next section of voting, or the dates when you can put forth some kind of a measure, like if you're voting on an opt-out or whatever. So I don't have any, how do I want to say that? I can't really support what's going on because I think, you know, it's just like you said, you're creating a problem that doesn't, or you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And I don't know why we keep trying to do that. I tried to point that out the other day in caucus, that this is sometimes what we do because we hear one person talk about something that they don't think is right, And then all of a sudden, there's a bill, and it doesn't affect anybody else. It's a carve-out. So I'm hoping that we don't make a lot of changes on the voting. That's my hope.
Thank you, yeah, so as a whip, I get my license plates in November, so I did have a nice long talk with our auditor here in Beadle County, because I live up at Lake Byron. And one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten since I got the job was keep your county auditors happy. So I appreciate you highlighting this. So I'm on the Senate Local Government Committee, and just on Friday, we had some bills before us that all passed out unanimously. They didn't even have any opponent testimony show up. And they're trying to clean up some of what were the unintended consequences from some of the changes that were made last year. Essentially, they wanted to harmonize when elections happen in an effort to boost like school board election turnout. That's really the last time Sioux Falls had one. They didn't have even as many people show up to vote as work for their school district. There's more employees of the Sioux Falls School District than showed up to vote. And we had a bill, it made it through the Senate, it died on the House side, where a Sioux Falls group basically wanted, every opt-out decision that your local school board makes has to go to a vote of the people. Even if, we're just ignoring the fact that these elections are expensive to have, and we, don't trust our school board, we're gonna have to change the way we operate here because a small group in Sioux Falls isn't happy. I'm kind of getting away from the question here. We did have a couple of bills, and we did hear from, I pulled it up here, some county auditors from Brown County and McPherson County that drove to Pierre and told us that they were in favor of the sort of changes that we were being made. So I'm hopeful that we're moving in the right direction in addressing some of the unintended consequences that I think you're referencing from last year. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Who else has a question? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Brian Smith, Huron City. First thing I'd like some feedback on is HB 1245, which is a sales tax increase proposal for capital improvements in municipalities. The other item that I'd like to get some feedback on has to do with TIF bills. That seemed to be a pretty popular item this year. And just your views on those two.
I can take the TIF bill, if that's okay. The TIF bill, yeah, there's a lot of people that don't understand TIF. And I think that TIF is a good economic development tool. And I don't know why people think that it's going to be a giveaway, a gift. It's not. It has to be paid. And a lot of times, you can entice a company to come in or some kind of a business if you allow them to have a TIF. There was a big TIF over the TIF in Rapid City, and it was about Liberty Land, an amusement park, and housing that was going to be going up. And the people in Rapid City gathered the number of signatures they needed for a petition to have a vote of the people, whether it should be a TIF or it should be granted a TIF or not. And of course, the TIF lost, which was really sad because Pete Leon out there has been very instrumental in promoting economic development in Rapid City, and he was going to cover the project. And so that's all he was doing. And I thought, that would be fair for all he's done for Rapid. So I don't know that there's a lot of naysayers as far as TIFs go in the legislature, but it's just like anything. The people that scream the loudest get the most attention during session. So I don't think our TIFs are going to be in danger. I think most of them support them.
TIF is tax increment financing, which for the past couple decades has been used by local governments, cities, and other local government units to help pay for infrastructure, road, sewer, those kinds of things when somebody needs that kind of construction for a new business or a business that's remodeling. Go ahead, Brendan.
Thank you. And we could take a whole hour to try to explain TIFs. It's a somewhat complex. It really comes down to how well your local authorities draft them and the contracts around them. I'll just point out a couple of important projects in Huron. There's a hotel in the works on the south side of town that's going to be using a TIF. The Peaceful Pines on the north side of town, which I think, I've got grandparents that are approaching an age where they're going to need a facility like that maybe soon. I've got parents that are approaching retirement age, so things like this are on my mind, and I know time's coming for me too, so I want to make sure that that care is available close to home, like I mentioned earlier. They used a TIF to get that built. It wouldn't have happened without it. The Greater Huron Development Corporation does a really good job of using this tool appropriately. The people that don't like TIFs, they may point to a project or two that where it wasn't maybe done quite right, and then it gives the whole thing a black eye. But it really just comes down to local control and making sure that we've got the right people in the seats that are using the tools responsibly. Your other question was around. So House Bill 1245, they start numbering House bills at 1,000. So that's 245 bills into the queue. Hasn't been much action on it. I will say it is only passed House local government, and it passed 8-4. So I wouldn't quite say it limped out, but it certainly doesn't have strong support. It's probably in the balance. I can't really speak to the specifics on it with any authority, so I'll have to punt, and maybe by the next time we get together in this room, I'll have a little more for you on that.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it either. I'm not on local government, so I haven't heard the arguments. Sorry.
That's okay. Brian
Go
Smith,
ahead.
here in City. 1245, I believe, is scheduled to be in front of the floor on Monday, that's why I'm bringing it up. And the municipal league is asking for support on that bill. So I'm just bringing that present, starting in the House.
I'll report that the one of our cadre that's not able to be here is on House local government and voted for it. So take that for that. He's a smart guy. I'll let him explain it to me when he's back. But that's a good sign, I guess.
And Brian, and everyone, it's good to know how people are feeling about things before the vote comes down rather than after the fact. So any municipal people, county commissioners and so forth, we like to hear your input. And we a lot of times base it on that, and how many emails we get, and if there's good information given.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? I guess we answered all the questions. That's pretty good. Anybody?
I can talk.
Okay.
Drone on.
We're gonna give each of these two a couple minutes to talk about either bills they're sponsoring or talk about bills and activities in the committees they serve on, and maybe that'll spur some questions in your mind. Lana, if you want to start? Go ahead.
Sure. I had an ag processor's lien that went through last year unanimously, and this year I updated it. What it called for is putting on the Secretary of State's website the filing of liens, and that way people could go and look to see if there's any liens against the people, possible customers that they have, or they can file liens on there. We asked for 60 days grace period in order to file the liens rather than 30. And that was part of the change this year, plus updating from 2026 to 2027 in order to put it on the Secretary of State's website. If we would have done it last year, it would have cost $35,000 for that upgrade. So we didn't want to do it that way. One other bill that I'm working on right now, and to me it's very serious, it's trying to get some money from appropriations, like to the tune of $2 million, to help the schools out with behavioral health. And what we'd like to do, it's in the works already. I've talked to the Children's Home Society in Sioux Falls, and they are willing to help out with a regional behavioral center up in the north part of the state. It probably would go in Aberdeen. There is a building that we can secure. And I don't know if you know much of the background. If you haven't been in the school lately, some schools are really having trouble. And when I heard some of the stories coming from some of the superintendents, I guess I haven't heard from your superintendent, but some of the other superintendents up north, it just sounded like a crazy house. I mean, they've got little kids throwing desks and breaking windows and punching holes. One of the teachers told me she's not going back next year. She's going to retire because she's tired of going home with bite marks on her. I got a call last weekend from a principal. I won't tell you what school, but his wife is a kindergarten teacher, and she had a boy, a special needs boy, rear his head back and knocked her teeth loose. And the one tooth is dead. So, I mean, these people should not have to go into combat like that. And not only that, but the other little kids are scared. You know, they're thinking, oh, well, what am I going to get beat up? So we are trying to work to get this money, to get this off the ground, and tie in with somebody that already knows the business of the behavior of the children. It will not start out to be a residential place. It would start out to be just a day school. So I'm excited about that. And I see Dr. Steinhoff put his little pad down, so I must have surpassed time and he gave up. I'm sorry.
I thought there was no time for this part. Requirement.
Yeah.
Senator, go ahead.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there, Lana. We owe it to our teachers to put them in an environment where they can focus on their important job and they're not also taking on parenting roles. I mean, I went to school. It's not like they were allowed to smack me around, but I did have the fear of the Lord. And I knew that if I stepped out of line, that there would be consequences, and maybe we've gotten away from that a bit too much. And so I'm glad you brought that up. Why don't we talk property taxes? It's something that we hear as legislators a lot, specifically from a few different areas in the state. Not so much our district. We haven't had these property values just going sky high. But we'll talk about Sioux Falls, and their property values rise because they're seeing a lot of growth, businesses pulling in. Unfortunately, a lot of our high school graduates, they move down there, they buy houses, it kind of upward pressure there. And then out in the hills, the issue in the Black Hills is really people moving in from out of state, especially during COVID. They looked at South Dakota and said, I like what I'm seeing there. And actually our governor was out there advertising. South Dakota's open, come on in. And it's been great, but there's a lot of growth and a lot of really high property values out there. And then you go toward Rapid City and east of there, and it's having to do with the Air Force Base. And so those specific instances, I'm hearing from their lawmakers that they are really getting a lot of pressure from their constituents. And so I want to help them work through that. Currently, I think I've heard as many as 40 different bills to address different ways that we can provide property tax relief. Some of them are very broad. Some of them try to be very targeted about where they're giving, making sure that the help is going where it's needed most, and we don't, blow up our entire budget. Because let's remember, I don't like paying that. I don't like writing that check every year any more than anybody else does. But go and try to hire your own private police force and fire department and roads and schools for what you pay. It's just one of those things that if we want to continue to invest in our future, our children are part of that, our infrastructure is part of that, and we can't really ignore that. When there's 40 bills flying out there, I start to ask myself, what if we pass all of these? Are we going to be paying people to own houses? I mean, I need to start seeing people coalescing around a couple of ideas. I want to make sure that we're not letting Sioux Falls export a problem out to communities like ours, because we have our own problems here. And so this is an opportunity for us to have conversations, say, well, if I'm gonna help you work on something for your constituents, you know, here's what we're facing out in more rural areas, and it's definitely a good, I don't wanna say bargaining point, but it's a good conversation starter around that. And that's really something that's been part of a lot of conversations. What are we gonna do on property taxes this year?
And everybody has a big, excuse
Go
me,
ahead.
everybody has a big idea on how we can solve property tax problems. And as Senator said, it's kind of contained in the Sioux Falls, Rapid City area with the growing pains and the overinflation of the prices of the houses. We are the second lowest for taxes in the nation, is what was quoted to me. And so, you know, we find that we don't have a lot of people that are very upset about paying taxes. I mean, we don't like to pay them, but we do it. And, but we've got different areas that have different problems. And the senator was saying about, you know, different, like the fire department and so on. You don't have to drive around very far in Rapid City to see fire station here and a fire station there. I mean, they have to have all of these because they're, you know, the lay of the land is different, and they have a lot of hills, or a lot of trees in their hills. And so, you know, with every different situation comes a different problem. I mean, I noticed that early on in my legislative run, because I was talking to people in local government about township roads and how we need to maintain them, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I told them, and they said, oh, we have like paths. They called them paths. And I said, well, we don't have pine beetles either, but I know that's a problem for you. You know, so we all have different problems that we need to solve, and we can't just say, well, that's their problem out there. We have to kind of all work together, and it becomes really convoluted when that happens.
Thank you. On a personal note, I would indicate my property taxes payable in '26 went down this year. I'm curious if anybody else in the audience had that experience compared to last year. There are some, yes. My county tax went up a little bit in dollars. My city tax went down a little bit in dollars. And my school tax went down the most part of my decrease. And I think that's a different story than you hear from Sioux Falls and Rapid City, what's going on as far as property taxes in Huron. Okay, another question? Come on forward, Ben. It was going to be you or I, and if you get yours, I'll go next.
Well, Ben, before you start, I was just going to comment on your shirt. Bad decisions make great stories. You should really have page after page after page by now for your paper during the legislative session.
I have told Bob Kendrick and John Holt that I wish that I could serve in Pier the way they do, because I would never stop having things to write. I know through my cousin who works with our economic development in the state that right now there is a pretty heavy look at data centers, but it's probably not going to benefit income-wise those areas that are struggling with property tax, because the best spot for a data center is not going to be Sioux Falls or Rapid. It's going to be somewhere like they're talking about already, Dual County, or, I mean, quite frankly, Spink could actually be a really good county. They've talked about Spink and Clark in that area as potential spots from my cousin. I'm curious what you guys have heard so far, if there is such a, you know, a pushback from more of our larger city representatives on this idea, because it does, everything I read says it's a very, very contentious topic, but as I'm reading through it, there's a lot of water things, there's a lot of things beyond just the finance things that are a curiosity, but the finance end of things. I'm curious where you guys hear the most pushback on that.
Thank you. The question is on data centers, incentives, and what they're hearing. Senator.
Well, the one that's been in the news is actually down in Sioux Falls. I will say, based on the research I've done, actually Spink County doesn't have any power lines that are big enough to make it. Think of it like an interstate highway, but in electrical terms. You do want to be along lines that are on the order of the WAPA line that runs just south of Lake Byron and crosses 37 there. Or the Basin line that kind of runs like this. So Spink County doesn't have anything like that. Beetle County does have the two that I mentioned there. And so maybe down the road they'd be looking at us. I haven't heard of any developers that are. On the water use issue, they basically use a closed loop system for their cooling. They're not taking in water from a river, cooling, and exhausting it back out to the river. They might do that in places like Louisiana where they have water like crazy, but the reason they would be locating in a place like South Dakota is for our cooler climate. It's easier to keep computer equipment cool here, and so they would use a closed loop, not unlike the in-floor heat that maybe some of you have in your basements or in farmers have in their shops. The same way that you can pump heat in, you can use that to pump heat out. On the finance side, there actually is a data center out by Agar, South Dakota. Most people don't know this, but it's a Bitcoin mining data center, and Bitcoin's its own thing, and we won't get into that. But interestingly, the Agar School District got in a little hot water this year because they had too much money. There's actually state rules on how school districts can't keep large amounts of money in reserve. They got in trouble because of all of the property taxes that these data centers end up paying. And so a lot of the talk has been around, do we give a sales tax exemption specifically on the computers that they put inside the data centers, which would put us on a level playing field with 41 other states, and would really, if we don't have that, we're not really on a level playing field with those states. They would pay millions in property taxes into the jurisdictions where they are, which would allow us to lower the levies on all of us that live here. They would pay sales tax on all the electricity that they buy, and I'll put that in perspective. A hyperscale data center will use more electricity in a week than you will use in 10 lifetimes, just round numbers. So they will be paying enormous amounts of sales tax on that. And so it's something we need to talk about. Obviously, any project has ways that it can be done right, ways that it can be done wrong. We just need to make sure we're honest and engaged on the ways that it could affect our way of life here, and make sure that it fits wherever we end up putting them. And so I'm hopeful that we can continue to be part of the conversation as our state and not be out in the cold on this, because I feel like our lunch is already half eaten. They've been building these around the country for the last 10 years, and we really have had very little interest in our state thus far.
Okay, then. The closed loop water system doesn't always work because the chips are far hotter, so they're going down. So that would be one thing that would have to be solved. The electricity, people are worried about brownouts, and they've said that they would be first to shut their things off in the case of, people not getting their electricity. But, when I said they said, I'm not sure that that's in writing anywhere in a contract. I have been following these data centers for probably a year. I wake up in the middle of the night and I look to see what else is going down in the research. I've followed the percentages, the gains and the losses. I think right now data centers are hurting. I think they're on the brink of maybe not accomplishing what they're supposed to do because they've overspent in the size that they're building the data centers, and they can only store so much data, and then they have to shut off according to the rules that I've heard coming out of the Aris Data Center in Sioux Falls. The NVIDIA is a big group. I can foresee. That's my take. I haven't voted personally on.
My name is Steve Sharon. I split my time between. My name is Steve Sharon. I split my time between here in South Dakota and Enemy Swim Lake. I'm president of the South Dakota Lakes and Streams Association. I'd like to ask a little advice on House Bill 1157. We were defeated Tuesday. by Ag and Natural Resources. I feel kind of bad. One of my supporters was Mr. Van Diepen, and that was one of the reasons I came this morning. But as president of South Dakota Lakes and Streams Association, with all the challenges to our water, our surface water across the state of South Dakota, could you two please give me some advice? We took a bitter beating on Tuesday morning. Could you give me some advice what we should do next?
Thank you. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I live at Lake Byron, and the bill that he's referencing, the zebra mussel, an invasive species that, the Game Fish and Parks showed us the map and went year by year on how it has spread and is continuing to spread. And I mean, I don't have an easy answer on how. I don't know that we do stop it. It is just one of those things that the cat's out of the bag, and we hope that anglers are being, doing what they need to do with their boats to make sure they're not spreading them, and we need to educate on that side of it. I think we need scientific research on, that's kind of the Hail Mary at this point, is we're going to need a scientific solution to drive them back out of our lakes, and then educating legislators on, the economic value of a lot of real estate. And yeah, I'm being a little selfish here because I do live on a lake, but it's, there's a lot of economic value around lakes and streams, and it doesn't just have to do with people's vacation homes or something like that. The pumps for livestock water that are coming out of the river can be destroyed in a matter of a year by this species, and so this can affect people's livelihoods. It's ugly. I realize I haven't given you much to feel great about here on it. There's just, I think, a lot more education we need to do, that this is coming for all of us, and we need to take it very seriously and do everything we can.
I agree with the senator. I think education is key. I think people telling their stories of those that have been affected by this would probably be a good idea. We have this, and it's not just in Pierre. It's in our families, in our towns. Nothing's a problem until it is. And I can foresee a lot of irrigation systems plugging up, being ruined, and then it's going to be a massive, expensive problem for our farmers. I read that there was zebra mussels coming out of one of the irrigation systems, even at a golf course up north. So it's starting to be a problem. And, I was there when Mr. Sharon was giving his testimony the other day in Ag and Natural Resources. And the things that were said in opposition, you could tell were not being believed by the person that was telling them. It was just like, well, we're not going to deal with this issue, so we're just going to gloss it over and put it on the back burner for now because we got other things. That's the impression that I got. But Mr. Sharon, definitely you showed yourself to be a friend of the farmers and a friend of our water systems and everything. I don't know why they don't have some kind of a fix, and I think copper kind of takes and puts them somehow together. Maybe you can explain the copper. Yeah, copper sulfate.
So the James River, you drove to Huron to talk to me about the James River irrigators that irrigate out of the James River, which is contaminated with zebra mussels. So if we do mitigation and we teach the irrigators to put a copper screen with copper sulfate drip, they can keep them out of their irrigation system. The golf course that you referred to went to turn their water on. They get their water out of Lake Compesca. They went to turn their water on this year. No water came out. They're full of zebra mussels, and they had died, and no water would come out. So what they're doing now is putting copper sulfate on the intake, and that's what I'm working with the James River people from Huron to Redfield with, because they're not here yet.
Yeah.
But when they get here, you hit the nail right on the head.
It's better to be it's better to be proactive rather than reactive, and this is what Mr. Sharon's trying to do, I think. But as I said, we let things go. It doesn't affect me, so, let's let it just go into the back burner. But he definitely has worked hard and long on this, call it his cause, whatever. Hill to die on, I don't know, maybe it is for you. But I think, getting, as the senator said, getting out there and educating people and having people come and tell their stories of those that have been affected, even from out of state, I think that would be very effective, so people will at least take a look. You had to listen to all the blue sky being painted, like all of these people are having their boats checked and they're being told to drain them and stuff. And I'm thinking, where? I haven't seen them. So I think that was just glossing over the problem. And I felt bad for you because you worked so hard on this.
Thank you very much. We'll
Thank
be
you,
going.
Steve. We have come to the end of our hour session. We're going to give each of the legislators a chance to make some closing comments, and we will start with Senator Whiff.
Well, thank you. And I'll just start by thanking all of you who have reached out to me. I appreciate hearing and seeing that we have a community that is interested and involved. When I was appointed, I had a few people ask me, so do you have to move to Washington, D.C. now? And you have to ask yourself, do you know we have a state legislature? It's a different job. But no, I'm actually really lucky that we have a community that still cares. Not every legislator gets that. I'll quick highlight, the first vote I took as a senator was back in September at a special session of the legislature. Our prison in Sioux Falls was built back when we were still called Dakota Territory. That is how old that building is. And it had lived well past its use. And the reason I want to highlight it is because it was a case of really responsible government. I'm actually really proud of the legislatures that went before me. When COVID dollars were pouring into the states, a lot of states started new programs, which, as you know, government programs last on and on and on into the future, so they keep costing money every year. Our leadership was wise enough to put that money away because we knew we had this big expense coming. And so it actually made it a really easy decision for me to go ahead and vote for that, even though it was, my first vote ever as a senator, was the largest appropriation of funds in state history. And it weighed heavily on me, but when I realized that we can pay cash, we're not issuing bonds and doing debt financing. We don't have to raise people's taxes for this. We took money we already had, and we're going to build a $600 million investment in public safety so that there can still be consequences for people's bad decisions and that we don't have to be releasing people before they're fully rehabilitated. It has also started a great conversation in the legislature around how do we and are we rehabilitating people that end up in prison. Are we simply locking them up and throwing away the key and forgetting about them, or are we trying to invest in them where appropriate in their education so that when they get out of prison, they can find gainful employment that will lead to a good life and not turn back to the old ways? And I'm grateful that I've kind of stepped in at a time when we're having those conversations in our state. And so that was really a fun, I would say, first topic to come up with because it really highlights how we do things right in this state, and I'm grateful that the legislature was able to pass that and that we're on the right track on that project. So thank you for the opportunity to be your senator. Continue to look forward to hearing from you and speaking to you at these events in the future.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that a little bit. The money, there was, again, misinformation, like, oh, now our taxes are going to go up because of the new prison. But the money actually was taken from COVID, and the money that we had there, and put into the incarceration fund and earmarked for that very thing. So we couldn't really take it out and use it in the state general fund for anything else, for schools or anything like that. That happened back in 2021. somewhere around through there. So I think that was also a good move. We've got a prison that really needs updating, and there's no sense in trying to remodel something because it's impossible to have people go in and out of the prison and remodel. They have to be checked every time they go and bring a load of lumber in or something. And I thought, oh, this is just going to be really wonky here. So I'm glad that we also got that project done. I wanted to address with you a little bit about the guns on campus. I'm not a fan of guns on campus. There's a lot of trust placed in people that have enhanced concealed carry. But that's to say then that the people that are on campus can be on an even plane all the time. And that's not necessarily the case. You know, anybody can have a bad day. I worry about guns on campus with the drugs, the alcohol, the breakups between girls and boys, you know, and stuff, and anybody can be pushed over the edge. So I didn't vote for it last year, even though I am an NRA person. I won't vote for anything that way this year. I talked with the sponsor. He said, it's freedom. It's a freedom bill. Well, whose freedom? You know, whose freedom? Because usually when we say something's a freedom for one, it turns around and bootstraps somebody else. So we have to be careful for that in our decision-making process. I want to thank you all for being here today. And anytime you need to get a hold of me, it's better to email me because I see those right away. We are not able in session to give you a call back right away. We have to keep our phones off and our minds on what we're doing. So the email arrives to us much faster and we can take a glance at that. But so appreciate you attending. So appreciate your attentiveness. And I always look forward to coming down here. You're just a nice group of people. And so, again, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of the refreshments.
Let's show our appreciation for the legislators. A couple of announcements. We encourage you to enjoy the burger battle going on in Huron for the third time till the end of the month. Secondly, the Huron Area Concert Association is featuring the Conjurers. That'll be on February 18th at 7 o'clock, but they didn't tell me where. Anybody know?
James Valley.
Okay. Thirdly, the next MX at the Decks is February 21st. I also want to thank you for coming, and especially thank the people that got up and asked questions, because that's what makes a good forum. Thanks for your interest in government and what's going on, and have a great day.
Mike, if I could just say one more thing. Representative Van Diepen and Brandon, did you bring your petitions?
I have one.
Yeah, okay, so we do have our petition sheet to sign back there as we're planning to run for office. We would appreciate getting some of your endorsements on there. It's quite a simple process. I'm sure most of you have signed petitions before, but I think they're back there by Gary and Rosie and Nancy, so thank you.